Why is the lion the king of the jungle? It's clearly not the biggest. The elephant's the biggest. It's clearly not the fastest either. That's clearly the cheetah. So why is he the king? What makes him significant to be the king? All the only lion's only doing right now is laying under his tree in the shade, relaxing. His lioness and cubs are just nibbling at his ears, his tail, and he's just standing there, not moving. He's just staying there with his big, gorgeous mane. But what happens is this, only one time to prove that he's the king, is that the other animals notice the lion getting messed around. They see him getting nibbled on, and they think, oh, we can do that. The hyenas, the jackals, they go up over to the lion laying under his tree. They start barking at him. They try and nibble on his ear, and that's where they messed up. The lion gets up, roars. Half of them already are left. They're all gone. The other half get murdered, each and every one of them. And the lion goes back to under his tree and just lays down. That's why the lion is the king. And who else is king? No other than heavyweight boxer Jack Johnson. He showed everybody why he's the best, why he's the king of the jungle. And he was a Tony Montana in his era. Now, the cub Jack Johnson was born in 1908 in Galveston, Texas. His parents were just newly freemen. He had brothers and sisters, and everybody knew since day one Jack Johnson was out to do big and better things. School was never really for him. He dropped out of school and worked as a laborer, and by the age of 16, he said he had enough, and he said, I'm going to go out for my dream. And that's when he moved into New York City and Boston and found his passion, boxing. As I stated, at 16, he got his first fight. Like an amateur like himself, he was only going to be winning $1.50. At that time, it's equivalent to about $33 right now. Once he noticed the purse of the winning the fight, he knew he had to take it. He fought, knocked out, and won his first fight. And this is where it gets good. Because the badass Jack Johnson, the lion, took his first taste of blood and it woke the lion up. And he wanted more. He wanted to take everything. He was power hungry. He didn't care about the money, but he knew with power came money, and he wanted to conquer the world. After taking his first taste of blood, he knew he had to go pro, and he knew he can go pro, and he knew he could be king. That's where he has his first fight against Bob Thompson, with a winning around $25. Right now, it's probably $800, close to it. The fight only lasted 4 rounds. He came, he saw, and conquered that fight. By the 1900s, Jack Johnson has made a name for himself in the boxing world. He becomes a notorious heavyweight boxer, given the nickname the Galveston Giant. The people knew and hated him. No one wanted an African American to be the face of boxing. They all wanted to see him fail, and he loved it. He loved the hate. His next goal was taking his place as the rightful heir to the throne, become the next heavyweight champion of the world. At the time, the world's heavyweight champion was Jim F. Jeffries, and Johnson was out for his head. Johnson would ask several times to fight, but Jeffries had no plan on taking on Johnson. Living in racist America, Jeffries never wanted to spar against an African American opponent. He believed that African Americans were inferior in all aspects, and it would be an embarrassment even to consider fighting against Johnson. So Johnson, being the lion, he waited under his tree and waited for the right moment to take his throne. That right moment finally came when Jeffries lost to boxer Tommy Burns. And this is where the lion knew he was ready to get his throne. Johnson asked multiple times for Burns to fight, and Burns finally agreed only because of how much money they were going to make. It was about $30,000, and present time it is about $1 million now. But Johnson didn't care about the money. He fought for the power. And Johnson knew with power came fame and fortune. He wanted to prove to the world that what a white man could do, a black man could do even better without breaking a sweat. The fight took place outside Sydney, Australia. Johnson was known to tease his opponents, mocking each punch thrown at him, dancing like Ali, being cocky because he knew he had burns. Back then, boxing would go past 10 rounds like how it is today. Some fights would be between 25 to 40 rounds. The battle against Burns, though, only lasted 14 after the cops had to stop the war. Johnson was beating Burns to a pulp. Cops nor white fans liked the idea that Tommy Burns was getting murdered by the Galveston Giant. They did not want to lose as a race as a whole and knew the best thing to do was to stop the fight now before Johnson officially knocked him out. So the war was called, the king took his throne, and the first time in history, an African American was the heavyweight champion of the world. He was the king of the world. Jack Johnson had it all, but not just everything. He still wanted to beat the living crap out of Jeffries, and he wanted him now. After even numerous times calling Jeffries out, he finally agrees to a fight to the Galveston Giant. It took place on July 4th, 1910. It was known as the Fight of the Century. Jeffries was named the Great White Hope in hopes that he can finally end the reign of an African American as a heavyweight champion. But as I stated before, you never try to fight a lion, especially one such as Jack Johnson. After 14 rounds of constant beating, Jeffries loses to the lion, and Johnson remains as the world's heavyweight champion. The white fans at the fight and listening in hate Johnson more than ever. Seeing a black man sitting at the top of the throne, Johnson is finally the true king of the jungle, and Jeffries agrees. At the end of the fight, Jeffries states, "I couldn't have hit him. No, I couldn't have hit him in 1,000 years." So what do you do when you're the king of the jungle? You do anything you could possibly want to do, because you're not going to let anybody tell you not to. He decides to get married to a white woman not once, not twice, but 3 times. He dresses himself to the nines every day, and he's driving the nicest cars. He even got charged with a violation of the Mann Act. He was sentenced to prison for 1 year. And you know what he did? That SOB moved to Europe, fought there, and wrote 2 books instead. And when he decided to finally come back to the US and he was going to get arrested finally, he said, "No, I'm going to drive my car." And he drove his car right to prison, stayed there for a year, came back out, and continued fighting. Johnson kept on fighting until he was 60 years old. Why? Because he loved the power. He loved the taste of blood. He loved being the best. He stopped when he was 60, and on June 10th, 1946, he got in a really bad automobile accident and passed away. Jack Johnson would say the fight between life and death is to the finish, and death ultimately is the victor. I do not deplore the passings of these crude old days. He never cared what anybody had to say about him. He was that badass. He'll be known as the Tony Montana of heavyweight boxing forever. Even Sylvester Stallone saw this and asked Donald Trump if he could pardon him for the violation of the Mann Act. And when you have Rocky Balboa talking about the Scarface of boxing, how could President Trump say no? So he pardoned him in 2016, and the lion lives on till this day. My name is Nicholas Cupo, and this is why Jack Johnson is my significant, phenomenal, badass African American historical figure. Thank you.